Fundamentals of Physics video lecture series. This is my 11th talk, part first of vector algebra. In this talk, before starting learning about vectors, I would summarize what we have learned so far by using scalar and vector in the last 10 lectures. We have noted that physical quantities are required to specify the state of the system, the changes which occur in the system, to understand the laws of nature, or in other words, to study natural phenomena. A physical quantity, in addition to numerical value, also has units and dimension. The quantities also have a tensorial character, and by that we mean that a physical quantity may be a scalar, vector or tensor of higher rank. Rigorous discussion of tensors and vector space will not be taken up in this lecture, and it is being deferred and would be taken up at the appropriate level whenever the need would arise. So it will be taken up later. We know that we have to express the physical quantities and to assign it numerical values. Assigning numerical values to a scalar is quite easy, because irrespective of number of dimensions of space, a scalar can be described by a real number. Like mass of a particle, which is a scalar, and you can say mass of a particle is 50.2 milligram. Here the value of mass is specified by a number 50.2 and a unit milligram, and definitely it has a dimension of mass. 50.2 is a positive real number. Mass is such a kind of scalar which can have only positive real number value. But there are scalars which can have both positive and negative number value. For example, the electric charge. Electric charge of a proton is positive, but that of an electron is negative. And therefore, we often specify the charge on an electron as negative of 1.6 into 10 raised to power minus 19 coulomb. Coulomb is the SI unit of electric charge. So a scalar quantity can be very easily described by using a real number. Some scalar quantities have only positive real numbers, but in general a scalar quantity can have positive or negative real number values. Now, to understand the vector, we will begin with the geometric meaning of vector. The way vector have been introduced historically, it's a complex history and I will not go into that. But what we are describing, the term vector was first introduced in physics literature by the great theoretical physicist, classical physicist William Rowan Hamilton, and you will come to hear more about him when we will discuss classical mechanics after completing the Newtonian mechanics. The Hamilton introduced the term vector, and it has been derived from the Latin word vector, which means carrier. So we can understand, for example, in two-dimensional Euclidean geometry or two-dimensional Euclidean space being described by two mutually perpendicular axes, x-axis and y-axis, there are points, we have learned about that, and so a vector can be visualized as starting from an initial point and ending or terminating at another point. So for example, we write the vector AB vector as a vector which is starting from the initial point A and terminating at the final point B, and it's a straight line path from A to B, and we use an arrow to indicate the vector. So that is how geometrically we can understand a vector AB vector starting from point A and ending or terminating at point B. But there are how many directions? In case of one dimension, we had only two directions, positive x-axis and negative x-axis. In two-dimensional Cartesian space, we need to choose two mutually perpendicular axes, x and y axis. So there are only two base vector, one unit vector along the x-axis and one unit vector along the y-axis. But the vectors can have all possible infinite directions. So there are infinite direction in two-dimensional Cartesian space, and that is also true in three-dimensional Cartesian space, and therefore the understanding of vector will be very, very important for us, because a vector in physics can be understood as something which is having a magnitude and as well as a direction, and how to specify the direction and the magnitude, that issue we will now take up. But the algebra of the vector has been developed keeping in mind the kind of the geometric picture which we are giving here, and which is very close to the displacement vector which was introduced earlier. So if a particle moves from point A to point B, so the displacement vector is described as AB vector, starting from the point A and ending at the point B. To develop the terminology of vector algebra, we have to construct a consistent mathematics of vector algebra, and for that we make certain axioms, like one, that all parallel directions are equivalent. So in this diagram many parallel vectors are shown, A, B, C, D, O, P, and this vector V, all are having parallel directions. So all parallel directions will be considered as equivalent direction, and therefore two parallel vectors having same magnitude would be called equivalent, and they can replace each other in the algebra. So as far as vector algebra is concerned, two parallel vectors having same magnitude, and since they are parallel, so they are definitely having same direction, would be treated as equivalent. So there is no difference in the vector AB shown here and vector OP shown in the picture, because the magnitude is same and the line AB and line OP are parallel to each other. So what we generally do therefore, that given any vector with geometric meaning like AB, we can draw a parallel equivalent vector from the origin if we want, like OP. Now the way the vector has been defined, a vector say starting from O and ending at P, so we can reverse the direction and can say a vector starting from P and ending at Q. The two vectors are called negative vector of each other. So here we define a negative vector of PQ is negative of QP. So if you change the order, then so instead of starting from P and ending at Q, if it ends at Q and starts from P, the directions is same because along the same line, but the sense of direction is opposite, and therefore such two vectors are called negative vector of each other. For every vector there exists a negative vector, and that is because there is an additive identity which we will define soon. So magnitude and direction of vector we have to specify. The magnitude of the vector AB will be indicated by modulus of AB, by this symbol. So if you put the AB vector inside the modulus, then that will indicate magnitude, modulus, or norm of the vector. Three terms which are synonymous. You can call it magnitude of the vector AB, or modulus of the vector AB, or the norm of the vector AB. And the direction of vector AB would be denoted by AB cap. So here AB arrow is used to describe the vector, AB cap is used to describe the unit vector in the direction of vector AB, and the modulus of AB vector is magnitude of the AB unit vector. And so any AB vector can be decomposed into magnitude and the unit vector. All parallel vectors will have same unit vector. They may have different magnitudes, but as pointed out earlier, two parallel vectors having same magnitude would be called equivalent vector, and the word equivalence here means are equivalent for as far as algebra is concerned. In algebra, you can replace such a one vector from another vector which is equivalent. So that you have understood. And now the negative vector we have defined, that the negative vector would have the sense of direction opposite. So the unit vectors will be negative of each other, but the magnitude will be same. So if there exists a vector AB, there also exists a vector BA which is negative of AB, in the sense that the two have same magnitude but the opposite sense of direction as described in this mathematical equations. Now how to define the addition of vectors? So to develop the algebra, we have to develop the operations. Vectors as a set of vectors is under consideration, and now given two vectors, we can define the addition of two vectors. So first let us understand how it is defined. It is defined on the basis of the geometric meaning which we have given to the vector, and or you can say in terms of the displacement vector. So you when make a movement from say point A to point B, it can be described by a vector AB, and then suppose you start a movement from B to C, then that can be described by the vector BC vector, and we say that the sum of AB plus BC vector, so we move from A to B, then B to C is a new vector which is from A to C. So in that manner, that particular vector which is beginning from the initial point and now the final point. So in displacement, suppose you make a movement from one city to an intermediate town, and then from that intermediate town to a final destination city, then you can describe the sum of the travel which you have made of the displacement or in two segments, one first from the initial city A to the say city B, and the next is from the city B to the city C, can be defined as the net displacement is that you were initially at the point A and now you are at the city C. So in that manner the addition of vector has been defined, and you can also say that AB plus EF is also equal to AC if EF is an equivalent vector to the BC vector. So in geometric case, but if the vector which you are having EF is not starting from B, then what you can do, you can draw an equivalent vector in such a manner that it starts from the point B, and you can obtain geometrically the addition of two vectors. One more operation we need to define for developing or completing the algebra of vectors in geometric manner, and that is called scalar multiplication. Suppose you make a movement in one direction, you travel a distance x, and so you arrive at some point B which is equal to x distance from the point A, and then you decide to make another displacement by the same distance along the same direction, and so that is represented by BC. So as defined here, AC is AB plus BC, but since BC is also having same magnitude in the same direction as the AB, so you can write AB plus BC is equals to AB plus AB, so it is twice of AB. So what we say that in this manner we were having initially AB, now we have a new quantity AC which is twice of AB. So we have, because number 2 is a scalar parameter or scalar, so we can say we can define in this manner the scalar multiplication. So what is happening? What is the difference between AC and AB? Both are having same direction, but the magnitude of AC is double of AB. So the magnitude gets changed, direction remains same, and the operation called scalar multiplication. To define it, if you have a scalar quantity denoted by C and you multiply the vector quantity AB by the scalar quantity C called scalar multiplication, then AC is C times AB, and that will be a new vector AC would be having magnitude the C times the magnitude of the old vector, and the direction would be same. In general, any mathematical object, not necessarily the geometric drawings which we have made, any mathematical object having same algebra of addition of vectors and scalar multiplication defined here can be called a vector in mathematics, irrespective of whether we can visualize it in geometric manner or not. That is the generalization of the concept, that vector is anything in which the similar algebra works for vector addition and scalar multiplication. This algebra, you can remember, is very similar to the algebra for displacement vector. In fact, displacement vector is a vector, but in case of displacement vector, you can visualize it in geometric manner and you can understand. But the vector which were defined in the previous talks, like velocity and acceleration, are not geometrically visualized. So remember, any object which have this algebra which we have defined, and the basic algebra of vector is defined by defining the addition operator of the vectors and the scalar multiplication. So that is very important point. So now coming back to the previous discussion, having defined and understood vector in geometric manner, we come back to what we have learned so far. A vector, sometimes called geometric vector or Euclidean vector or spatial vector, that should also be remembered. And we have used the word earlier for describing a vector in one dimension. In a vector in one dimension, the x-axis was chosen and there were only two possible directions: the direction in the positive x-axis along and direction along the negative x-axis. That we have denoted by I cap plus I cap, meaning the positive x direction, minus I cap, meaning the negative x direction. And the position vector of a particle which was having coordinate x was written as x position vector is equals to coordinate x times the I cap, the unit vector. Depending upon if x is a positive real number, it will be a vector in positive x direction, and if x is a negative real number, it will be a vector in negative x direction. But there were only two sets of directions involved. Then by differentiating this quantity called the position vector, we have defined and obtained the velocity. So velocity is by definition equivalent to rate of change of position vector with respect to time. But since the direction I unit vector doesn't change with time, in case of the Cartesian axis, this is the beauty, that the base vectors are constant and do not depend upon time. So what you get, that velocity, which is defined as the rate of change of position vector, simply means the rate of change of the x coordinate and times the unit vector I. So v is written here as dx by dt and I, and this dx by dt, if you take the modulus of it, it will be called speed as defined earlier. And the same manner we have extended it to the acceleration and defined acceleration as the first rate of change with respect to time of velocity, or the first differential coefficient of velocity with respect to time, or the second differential coefficient of position with respect to time, and therefore the acceleration a can be written as d square x by dt square times the unit vector I. Vector in physics are generally understood as a quantity, as I have pointed out, which has both magnitude and direction. So here we say that position, velocity and acceleration all are vector, and these vectors are oriented either in positive I direction or negative I direction and have magnitude respectively, position as x, velocity as dx by dt and acceleration as d square x by dt square. And now we wish to generalize it for 2-dimension and 3-dimension later. So it was easy to specify the direction by use of one unit vector in one-dimensional space. But if a space is 2-dimensional, then a vector can be resolved in the 2-dimensional Cartesian space in similar manner by generalizing, and it can be expressed in terms of its component along two mutually perpendicular axes, x and y axis. Earlier also we have used 2-dimensional Cartesian space, but in that case on the one axis we have taken position and on the other axis we have taken time. Here we are talking about both the spatial dimensions. So two-dimensional, where x and y axis belongs to the physical space. So two-dimensional physical space, we can choose two mutually perpendicular axes and call them x and y axis. And there is a rule, as pointed out earlier also, that once you choose the x-axis, you have a freedom to choose it, and then you will have to choose the y-axis in anti-clockwise direction at 90-degree angle. And that is what we have said, that anti-clockwise angles are considered positive angles. So at positive 90-degree angle, the y-axis will be oriented with respect to the x-axis. And just as in case of one dimension, we have said that there is a unit vector I cap in direction of the x-axis. So we can have similarly a unit vector j cap in the direction of y-axis. And since earlier we have said that the position is defined by x I cap, so now we can write that the position by generalization would be given by xi plus yj. And in this manner, a point which was earlier having only one space coordinate x and will have now two coordinates x and y, and the point pxy in a two-dimensional Cartesian space will be having the position vector described by this relationship, that r is being now used for position vector. R vector is equals to x cap I cap plus y j cap, and where x and y can be called either the projection of position vector on x and y axis, or sometimes will be referred as component of the position vector along x and y axis. Both the term we will use, and I may use depending upon, any term can be used. And so we can have a definition of position vector as xi plus yj. Then similar extension we can do as we did in case of one dimension, that velocity is obtained by differentiating with respect to time the position vector. So we differentiate position vector. Now I and j both being Cartesian axis unit vector, and they are mutually independent of each other, as well as they do not depend upon time, and therefore the dr vector dt is equals to dx dt into I cap plus dy dt into j cap. Dx dt will be called the projection of velocity along x-axis of the x component of velocity denoted by vx. Dy dt will be called the projection of velocity along the y-axis, or will be called the y component of the velocity and will be denoted by vy. And in the same manner, we can extend the definition to acceleration and say for two dimension that acceleration is the rate of change of velocity with respect to time, and there will be two components of the acceleration, ax and ay, or two projection, one along x-axis called ax, one along y-axis called ay. What is ax? Ax is equals to dvx by dt, the differentiation of x component of velocity with respect to time, or you can say ax is the second differentiation of the x coordinate with respect to time. And similarly, ay is dvy by dt, and ay can also be written as d square y by dt square. So what I have done in this particular slide, that in the manner in which we have defined the position, velocity and acceleration for one dimension, I have generalized it to two dimension. But to put it in a concrete manner, now we consider any vector which is there, not necessarily r or v, any vector which is there in two-dimensional Cartesian space can be described, and one can find the projection vector along the x-axis and y-axis, and one can describe the vector in terms of the unit vector along the x-axis and y-axis. Suppose there is any vector, then you can draw an equivalent vector from the origin. As I have said earlier, all parallel vectors having same magnitude are equivalent. So vector may be located anywhere in the, even geometrically understanding it can be located anywhere, but I can draw an equivalent vector from the origin. And so this vector is drawn, which is starting from the origin, and this is the vector A. From the terminating point of the vector, I drop a perpendicular on the x-axis, and so this is a vector which is along the x-axis and having, say, magnitude or value equal to ax, and this is the value equal to ay. We called ax as the projection of the vector along x-axis, ay as the projection of the vector along the y-axis, and this vector A has been resolved into two vectors by the definition of addition, that you can get the A by first moving from this to this, put a perpendicular, and then moving parallel to y-axis and reaching here. So we say that the vector A can be resolved as AXI plus AYJ, where AX and AY will be referred as either the projection of vector A along the X and Y axis, or as AX will be called the X component of the vector, AY will be called the Y component of vector. And suppose this vector A is making an angle theta with the x-axis, then from simple trigonometry you can know that if the magnitude of the vector A is given by modulus of A, then you can find that this is the modulus of A, the base is AX, so AX upon modulus of A is cosine of theta, and therefore AX can be written as modulus of A cosine theta. And since AY is the perpendicular and magnitude of A is the hypotenuse here, so AY upon magnitude of A will be called sine of theta, so you can write AY as magnitude of A into sine theta. And when you square and add the two terms, you find that AX square plus AY square is equals to magnitude of A square. So we have determined this relationship, important, that if you can resolve a vector in terms of X and Y component, AX and AY, then you can find the magnitude or modulus or norm of the vector very easily by using this relationship, that magnitude of A square is AX square plus AY square. And we can make this substitution here, and then we can find that the magnitude of A can be taken common, and any vector A, if you know the angle theta, then can be described as magnitude of A cos theta I cap plus sine theta j cap, and magnitude of A is common, so within the bracket cos theta I cap plus sine theta j cap. So you know that if you know the magnitude of a vector and the angle it makes with the x-axis, in case of two-dimensional vector, it is very easy to find the component or projections, and it is very easy to resolve the vector in terms of the unit vector I and j, which are chosen along the x and y axis respectively. So that's very simple as it sounds. Now to understand it, suppose we have vector in first quadrant, and the question is find vectors of magnitude unity, and they are called unit vectors if the magnitude is unity. There are infinite unit vectors because there are infinite directions. In each direction you can define a unit vector, and any vector, if it is divided by its magnitude, would give you the unit vector. Here the question is to define. So magnitude, if we take 1 here, then the unit vector in the direction of A is cos theta I cap plus sine theta j cap. And I am now using that relationship here. And suppose the first quadrant, which is from 0 to 90 degree, I have chosen the standard angle 0 degree, 30 degree, 45 degree, 60 degree and 90 degree. So 0 degree can also be written as 0 radian, 30 degree is pi by 6 radian, 45 degree is pi by 4 radian, 60 degree is pi by 3 radian and 90 degree is pi by 2 radian, all following from the fact that pi equal to 180 degree. So 30 degree is pi by 6. Now the value of sine theta and cos theta and tan theta you must be knowing, and which are given here, that sine of 0 is 0, sine of 30 is half, sine of 45 is 1 by root 2, sine of 60 degree is root 3 by 2 and sine of 90 degree is 1. Few people do remember this by drawing a line and dividing it here. So you draw a line for one magnitude and divide it into 4 parts. One part, first, second, third and fourth. So 4 equal parts. So then you find that this is half and this is the middle part. So half, the square root is 1 by root 2, that is the value of sine 45. This is 1/4 part, and so the value is square root of 1/4, which is half, and this is the square root of 3/4, which is root 3 by 2, and this is the full part, so square root of 1, so 1. In that manner also people remember. And once you have right, then for this standard table, there is a beauty that now you can write the cos theta value in the reverse order. So 1 root 3 by 2, half, 1 by root 2, 1 by 2 and 0 in the reverse order in this manner from here. And you can determine the tan theta from the sine theta divided by cos theta. So we have that all the trigonometric functions sine theta, cosine theta and tan theta in the first quadrant have positive values, remember. So that's true that they have positive values in the first quadrant, and therefore when we use the unit vector for all this angle, if a vector is along the x-axis, then the unit vector is I. If it is making an angle 30 degree, then the unit vector is cos theta, which means root 3 by 2 I plus sine theta, which means half j. Here cos theta and sine theta both are 1 by root 2, so I have taken common I plus j. So if the unit vector which is making 45 degree angle with the x-axis would be described by 1 by root 2 I plus j. And similarly, the unit vector which is making 60-degree angle would be described because cos 60 is half and sin 60 is root 3 by 2. So half I cap plus root 3 by 2 j cap. And 90-degree, because you know that cos 90 is 0 and sin 90 is 1. So it would be described by just j. So 0-degree is just I cap x-axis, 90-degree means the y-axis, and which is j cap. So we find that in the first quadrant all the unit vectors having positive x component as well as the positive y component. But if we move to second quadrant, the angles are given here, 4 angles chosen: 120-degree, 135-degree, 150-degree and 180-degree. 120-degree is 2 pi by 3, 135-degree is 3 pi by 4, 150-degree is 5 pi by 6 and 180-degree is pi. The value of sin theta, cosine theta and tan theta is given in the table. You may also remember that sin pi minus theta, which we find is equals to sin theta. That's why sin 120-degree is sin pi minus 60-degree, and which means sin pi minus 60 or pi minus 5 by 3, whatever you call. Pi is the 180-degree. So sin 180-degree minus 120-degree. So you can write it, and that is by relationship equivalent to sin 60-degree, which is root 3 by 2. So by using the formula that's in terms of radian, it is better. Sin of pi minus theta is sin theta. The cos of pi minus theta is minus cos theta. You can obtain all these values from the previous values, or you can remember with the use also these values. So sin 120-degree is root 3 by 2, 135-degree is 1 by root 2, 150-degree is half and 180-degree is 0. Sin 0 is 0 and sin 180 is 0. But cos 0 is 1 and cos 180-degree or cos pi is minus 1, and similarly other cos angles are given here. Cos 120-degree is minus half, cos 135-degree is minus 1 by root 2 and cos 150-degree is minus root 3 by 2. Once you know sin theta and cos theta, determining tan theta is just taking the ratio and which is given here. What you find that in second quadrant, among sin theta, cos theta and tan theta, only sin theta is positive and the remaining two cos theta and tan theta are negative. So when we use that cos theta I plus sin theta j to express the unit vector, then we know that in this case the y component would be positive, but x-axis, your x component would be the negative. Quite visible in the second quadrant. When you draw the diagram, it would involve negative x direction. So the second coordinate, so x coordinate the negative x direction and y coordinate will be having positive values or positive angle. So unit vector in the second quadrant at 120-degree angle, if it is making with the x-axis, and it will be written as minus half I plus root 3 2 by j. Similarly, by writing down that cosine of 120-degree times I cap plus sine of 120-degree times j cap, and I have substituted the value. In that manner, I have written the value of unit vector when it makes an angle 135-degree is given by 1 by root 2 times of minus I plus j, and that of inclined at 150-degree to the x-axis will be having the unit vector minus root 3 by 2I plus half j, and that having 180-degree is exactly negative x-axis or minus I cap. So in that manner we can understand the vectors in second quadrant. Vectors in third quadrants can also be taken in the same manner, but the rule is different. Sin pi plus theta is minus sin theta and cos pi plus theta is also minus cosine theta. So based on that you can find the relationship here and you can do the calculations which are given here. So based on that the numbers are given: sin 210-degree, sin 225-degree, sin 240-degree and so on. And sin 270-degree is minus 1, but cos 270-degree or cos 3 pi by 2 is 0. And tangent theta is minus infinity in case of 270-degree, and in case of 90-degree it was plus infinity. So in this case both sine and cosine are negative. In third quadrant both x and y component will be negative, and from the values which are given in this table you can very easily write, because I have already explained the unit vector. If it is making an angle 210-degree will be given by minus root 3 by 2I minus half j. For 225-degree minus 1 by root 2I plus j. For 240-degree minus half I minus root 3 2 by j, and then finally the minus j for 270 degree. And just to complete the fourth quadrant, the four angles are chosen: 300 degree, 315 degree, 330 degree and 360 degree. 300 degree can also be written because if angle measured in negative direction, clockwise direction would be called negative, so it can be also called minus 60 degree. 315 degree can also be called minus 45 degree, or 330 degree can be called minus 30 degree. Angles in radians are given here. Sin theta is negative in this quadrant, but cos theta is positive. So x component will be positive, but y component will be negative of the unit vectors, and the values are given, and in the same manner we have obtained the unit vectors. So I have covered the unit vectors for all selected angles in all the four quadrants. Remember that there are infinite values of possible, because between 0 to 360 degree or one cycle there are infinite numbers, and therefore for infinite directions, and each will be having a different unit vector. Now to understand the addition of two vectors, we can do that. Suppose you have a vector A which has been resolved along the x-axis and y-axis, and suppose A, the x component or projection of A on x-axis is ax, and projection of A on y-axis is ay. Then we know that we can write A as axi plus ayj. And similarly, if the projection of B on x-axis is bx and projection of B on y-axis is by, we can write B as bxi plus byj. But if you have to add these two vectors A and B, what you have to do, you have to draw an equivalent vector of B from this point. And so you have to make a movement further, because what is B? B is having a movement further of value bx in x direction. So move bx in x direction. So from ax, if you move bx in the x direction, you will arrive at the point ax plus bx. So this terminating point or the resultant vector will be having x component ax plus bx and y component ay plus by, as explained in this diagram. So this diagram also explains how when we use the resolution of vectors along two axes, the addition works out. And as pointed out earlier, now we can write it in words, that if a vector A is given by in terms of its component as axi plus ayj, and a vector B which is given as bxi plus byj, then the sum vector C, which is C is equals to A plus B, you can write that, and you can then collect the coefficient of y and coefficient of j, and then you can compare it, that if we express C also in component, then we find from the component, because two vectors are said to be equal if and only if necessary and sufficient condition that the x component of the vector on the left hand side is also equal to the x component of the vector on the right hand side, and same holds for the y component. So here we say that if you add two vectors, then the x component of the resultant vector will be the sum of the x component of the vectors involved in the sum, and similarly the resultant vectors y component will be the sum of the y component of all the vectors involved in the sum. Because by using this 2-2 approach, you can extend it to addition of any n number of vectors. The addition operator between vector is commutative, and which means it doesn't depend upon order. Whether you add B to A or B to A, you can check from this mathematics also that A plus B is B plus A, and so you say that the vector addition is commutative. It is also associative, that when there are three vectors involved, A plus B plus C is to be obtained, then whether you first add B and C and then add A, or you add A and B and then add C, doesn't matter, because vector addition is associative. All these properties can be proved because we are dealing with mathematics, and these can be proved. The things which I am stating can be proved, but I am not describing, because we are not student of mathematics, pure mathematics here, but we want to learn vector algebra only. So I am not giving the proof that commutative or associative. The proof can also be obtained in geometric manner also. Subtraction of a vector, there is no need to define it separately, because subtraction simply means addition by a negative vector. So suppose you have to subtract out B from A, what you do? You add minus B to the A. So subtraction is not different from addition. It is considered as addition of negative vector. So subtraction is included in a sense in the vector addition, just with the difference that when you call it subtraction, you have to add negative vector. Now from this we can define the concept of null vector. So suppose there is a vector AB and then you add it to BA, so AB and BA are negative vector, so sum of AB plus BA will be equal to null vector. So sum of a vector and negative vector would be equal to null vector, but null vector is a vector, though it has zero magnitude and directionless, it can be taken in any direction, so it's a very difficult type of vector that it is having magnitude equal to 0, but it can have any direction, so you can call it directionless, or you can call it can have any arbitrary direction. So such concepts are essential for developing a consistent mathematics from the vectors. So we have defined, and in the set of vector there belongs a null vector which has this property that AB plus BA equals to null vector is also equals to BA plus AB. The commutative rule we can also make use of it. So null vector is also called the additive identity of the addition of the vectors. So it is an identity of the addition of vector, and so it gives, in other words, therefore the negative vector can also be called additive inverse. So minus A is the additive inverse of the vector A. And so whenever, by definition, whenever you add a vector and its additive inverse, it would give you the null vector. But an interesting thing you can discover through geometric also, that if you add vector AB, so plus a BC, so and then to CA, so AB plus BC will become AC, and AC plus CA will become AA, and vector is starting and ending at the same point, and therefore it will be a null vector. So in this way, if the three vectors AB, BC and CA are arranged, then AB plus BC plus CA vectors is equal to null vector. Same can be extended for 4 vector, 5 vector and so on. So if you draw it geometrically, then you will find that any polygonal you have, then the directions, if in either clockwise direction you choose all the directions, then you find that sum of all vectors involved in the polygonal will become 0. Or null vector, and null vector has component in every direction equal to 0. It cannot have a component which is non-zero in some direction. It would have 0 component in whichever direction you consider. And there are infinite directions in two-dimensional Euclidean geometry, and so the null vector can choose any of this direction in a sense, or therefore it's called directionless, or having arbitrary direction. Now we have already understood that we can define a unit vector by dividing a vector by its magnitude, and magnitude was defined earlier in 2 dimension. It is the under the square root of ax square plus ay square, and therefore the unit vector, which will be denoted by a cap, is a vector divided by its magnitude. We have substituted for a vector and the magnitude is written here, and then you can write it like this also, that the x component divided by the magnitude times I plus y component divided by the magnitude times j. And unit vectors we have discussed for all the 4 quadrants, and they have magnitude equal to 1. Now scalar multiplication can also be understood in terms of component also, that when you multiply by a scalar, we have understood in geometric meaning of the scalar multiplication, that when you multiply by a scalar c, each of the component of the vector will get multiplied by c, and because of that the magnitude of the scalar multiplication, say of any vector by some number c1, would result into that magnitude get magnified by that c1, but the direction remains same. So scalar multiplication is a beautiful operation in the sense it doesn't change its direction, it just only changes or enhances the magnitude, and that is very important when you change the scale. For example, if you express anything which is expressed in meter into centimeter, then definitely there is a change of scale, and that would be easily describable and understandable in terms of these conversion factors can be used as a scalar multiplication. And I have already earlier pointed out that we have used average velocity definition, the scalar multiplication, in defining the average velocity in earlier examples. Now 3-dimensional, we have to generalize it. So I have to repeat the same thing which I have said for 2 dimension, And once we have learned and got the confidence that we can generalize from one-dimensional vector to two-dimensional, we can generalize the two-dimensional vector to three-dimensional. In three-dimensional, we are choosing Cartesian space, and right now we are restricting ourselves to Cartesian physical spaces. Also, in one dimension you have one axis, x-axis. In two dimension you have two axes, x and y. In three dimension we have three axes, x, y, and z. And therefore, along each of these axes, x, y, and z axis, we have to choose unit vector and let I cap denote the unit vector along x-axis as done previously. J cap denotes the unit vector along y-axis as per the previous case, and for the z-axis let us denote k as the unit vector. So I, j, k are chosen as unit vectors, and any position vector, any point will have three coordinates x, y, and z, and any position vector can be written in this manner: xi plus yj plus zk. I, j, k are unit vector along x and y and z direction, and x, y, z are the, you can say, projection of the position vector along the x, y, z direction respectively, or you can say the component of the position vector along the x, y, and z axis respectively. And in the same manner as I have discussed for the two dimension, we can generalize it to three dimension. That velocity can be defined as dr by dt, and it can be expressed into three components: the x component, y component, z component. The x component of the velocity vx, or the projection of velocity along x-axis, will be equal to dx by dt. Y component of the velocity or the projection of velocity along the y direction would be denoted by vy, and it will be equal to dy by dt, and the z component would be similarly defined as dz by dt. So in this manner we have generalized the two dimension to three dimension, and the same thing we can extend to three dimensional acceleration. That acceleration will be obtained by differentiating velocity with respect to time, and you can express therefore the x component of the acceleration as either the first rate of change of x component of the velocity with respect to time, or second rate of change of the position vector with respect to time. And similar things you can say for the y component and z component. So you find it very easy that once you have learned the one dimension, that is why we have chosen specifically the one dimension first, then we can generalize the notion of the position vector, the notion of velocity, and the notion of concept of velocity and concept or definition of acceleration in the same manner. And it can continue in fact, but as I have pointed out to you earlier, that we as a biological species, we can see only three dimensions, and therefore the kind of the method objects which we see in the world are three-dimensional objects at most, and we can since see only three dimension, we are right now restricting ourselves to description of the laws of nature by using three dimension only. But remember, there are theories in physics which require more than three dimension, and so in this manner, for example, for a Cartesian space, you can keep on generalizing, and a four-dimensional vector would be given by the four axes is mutually perpendicular to each other. But up to three mutually perpendicular axes you can visualize. The fourth axis you cannot visualize, but you can understand it mathematically. And that is why the progress in science has been boosted by our mathematical intelligence improving the method of generalization and thinking of higher dimension. The search for higher dimension in nature or physics is still going on, but as I have said you, there are theories which require more than three space dimension in describing, and definitely we would be talking about those theories towards the end of series. So the vector A can also be resolved in the same manner as pointed out earlier, and in the three directions, and can be written as axi plus ayj plus azk. And if you take the summation, then you can again write in the same manner that the x component of the resultant vector will be sum of the x component of the vectors taking part in addition, and same will hold for y component and z component. So the things get in this particular manner: x, y, and z, three different axes are being taken in the similar manner, but different axes you consider the projections along that particular axis when you are discussing sum or anything like that. So the addition operator between vector is commutative, that is independent whether you consider one dimensional, two dimensional or three dimensional. And in the same manner negative vector can also be defined, and we can define in the same manner the unit vector or the modulus, and the modulus now will involve the square root of ax square plus ay square plus az square. So for a three-dimensional vector, the null vector can also be defined by the same manner that any vector and negative vector is added. And remember, the negative vector will have each component negative of the original vector. So when you add two vectors, it gives you null vector. Null vector has all components equal to 0. And with this generalization, we also find that we can write the magnitude of vector A as this, and magnitude of A, once you know that the square root of x square plus ay square plus az square, you can divide the vector A by its magnitude and can obtain unit vector in any direction. In the same manner, the scalar multiplication in 3 dimensions can be understood, that it will, the C1 which is being used for scalar multiplication will change each component, and each component will get multiplied by the C1, but the overall magnitude will therefore become C1 times, but the direction would remain same. Now we can understand certain aspects based on this generalization. The magnitude of sum of two vectors can be less than magnitude of a particular vector or all individual vectors involved in this sum. So remember, it's not necessary that magnitude of sum of two vectors should be greater than each of the vector, and very simple to understand. In geometrically also, you can draw two lines in such a manner that the resultant vector of the sum, which is we have defined earlier, is a very small vector in comparison to the individual vectors. So remember, the magnitude of sum of two vectors can be less than magnitude of an or more individual vector. So for example, the magnitude of a vector 3i plus 4j is 5. So 3i plus 4j is the magnitude having 5. You can consider another vector 2i plus 3j, it will have some magnitude, and if you take the difference or minus 2i minus 3j, and if you add, then you would find and compare that what is the relationship of the magnitude of vectors with the sum of the vectors. When you consider numericals, then you will come to know that it is possible. For simplicity, I can just say that if there is a vector which is having say 3i and another vector which is having 2i, and if you take the sum, then it is 5i, which is greater than the sum of each of the vector. But if there is a vector which is 3i and another vector which is minus 2i, then the sum is just I, and it has magnitude less than the 3i as well as the magnitude of minus 2i, which is also 2. So it is true that with one example it becomes clear that magnitude of sum of two vectors can be less than magnitude of any of the vector involved in the sum. Two vectors, unless being negative of each other, cannot add to 0 or null vector. 3 vectors can add to 0, 4 vectors can add to 0, 5 vectors can add to 0, but 2 vectors can add to 0 only if they are negative of each other. A vector cannot have magnitude 0 if one of its component is non-zero, and that is also important. And two vectors having magnitude 3 and 4 can make a vector of magnitude 7 if having same direction, a vector of magnitude 1 if they are oriented in opposite directions, and a vector of magnitude 5 if they are 90 degrees to each other. And therefore we make an understanding that if there are two vectors having say magnitude 3 and 4, the sum of the vectors, whatever be the direction, the maximum value of the sum of the vector can have, resultant vector can have the maximum value of magnitude equal to the sum of the magnitude of the two vectors, which in this case is 7, and the minimum value which it can have is equals to the magnitude of the difference of the magnitude of this vector. So difference of 3 and 4 is say 3 minus 4, if you say it's minus 1, but when you call magnitude then it is 1. So the sum of two vectors which are having magnitude 3 and 4 respectively in any direction, so you can consider all possible infinite combinations, then you would find that the resultant lies and is a vector which is having minimum magnitude 1 and maximum magnitude 7, and all other values between 1 and 7 are possible. and can be realized for a particular case. Now another example, we take numerical question, and that would help us in understanding. A vector has a magnitude of 3.14 units and it is directed east. Another vector B has magnitude 2.456 unit and it is directed 30 degree west of north. Find the magnitude of A plus B and A minus B. The two vectors are given. One vector is directed toward east and its magnitude is given 3.14. The another vector B is given which has magnitude of 2.456 and which is directed 30 degree west of north. So let us choose x direction to be the east and y direction then they will be the north, and so the first vector A is in the direction of x-axis, but the second vector, because it is on 30 degree west of north, so you can very easily understand that north is at 90 degree and it is further 30 degree angle away, so it will be at 120 degree to x-axis. So vector A is making an angle 0 degree, vector B is making an angle 120 degree. By using that formula, the vector A can be written as magnitude of A cosine theta I plus sine theta j. But for vector A, theta is 0, so you write magnitude of A which is 3.1 for I, cos 0 is 1, so I, but sine 0 is 0, so there is no j term here. Similar rule can be used for B, and here by mistake again typos, so this is B. So magnitude of B and cos 120 degree I plus sine 120 degree j, and so you substitute the values and you get the same. Now to add the vector, you have to add the two terms and you add A plus B, you find the expression. To subtract the vector, you have to subtract it out, so you have to obtain minus B. Minus B will have this coordinate component positive and this component negative, and you can very easily obtain the values. Here I have given the numbers which are very typical: 3.14, 2.456. Now 3.14 is having value up to 2 decimal places, this is having up to 3 decimal places, and by following the significant figures rule, I have expressed the magnitude of A plus B and A minus B only up to 2 decimal places, because the minimum number of decimal places in the two quantities of the magnitude involved is 2 decimal places. So that thing I have done here, which you can notice and you can determine. Numbers are very easy to, however in this case we have typical numbers, so either you will have to do the numerical calculations or you can use calculators. Calculators are not allowed in all examinations, so you must know how to find 1.91 square or 0.87 square. That's quite easy. 1.91 multiplied by 1.91 is called 1.91 square. And then if you know how to find the square root also, you can check that 1.91 square is 3.65 and 0.87 square is 0.75, and the sum of the two is 4.40, and if you take the square root then you get 2.10. So the sum of A plus B is having a magnitude of 2.1 and the difference is having a magnitude of 4.46, and that is the beauty here. But don't think that it cannot have. So it's having 4.46, but the magnitude of A was 3.14, that of B was 2.456, so none of the result can be more than the sum of 3.14 plus 2.456, which you have to work it out, which will be, if I am not wrong, 5.596. So these numbers are less than 5.596 and these numbers should be more than the difference, and the difference also you can work it out from here and you can check that they are more than the difference also. So that is the thing. The summation is equal to in that particular range. So a sheep, another problem, set out to sheep to a point 127.7 kilometer away in north direction from the starting point. So you start from some point and you want to reach at some point in the north direction, and so in north direction, suppose you want to move upward. North direction suppose is this direction, not the upward direction. North direction is suppose here. In the upward I am showing north. Then in that case you can say that you want to move 120.7 kilometer away in the north. But what is happening, that because of the stormy weather, you end up after a completion of some journey, part of journey at 82.3 kilometer to the north. Definitely but you are drifted away 27.5 kilometer to the east. So you have been drifted to the east. So how far and what direction must it now sail to reach its original destination? So what is given? That suppose the A is the starting point, B is the destination, and B is the intermediate point where it has landed. So it is given AD. What is AD? AD is 120.7 and the direction is north, so J. And what is AB? AB is given, the magnitude is given, and that is 27.5 kilometer to the east. So I have written 27.5 I, and 82.3 kilometer to the north, so 82.3 J. I have chosen x-axis along the east, and therefore north will become the y-axis, and the corresponding unit vectors I am using. So what we now know, that since the seller wants to reach the destination, it will have to complete the remaining journey from B to D. So BD we have to find, and the magnitude of BD we have to find, or unit vector of BD we have to find. So with what magnitude and in which direction? So since we know that AB plus BD equals to AD, so from this we definitely get that BD is equals to AD minus AB. Both AD and AB are given here. I determine the difference of subtraction. Subtraction is the addition of negative vector, which is done here, and then you find that you get the answers like this: minus 27.5I plus 38.4J. And from that you determine the magnitude of BD. Complex calculation, you have to multiply 27.5 by 27.5, you get 756.25, you multiply 38.4 by 38.4, you get 1474.56. When you add this number 756.25 plus 1474.56, then you get 2230.81. I may have rounded off the numbers, and finally you get 47.2 kilometer, and that I have expressed in 3 significant figure, because the minimum significant figure involved here is 3, and the unit vector also you can determine in the same manner by dividing the vector, because you are already having BD, divide by this 47.2, so we have divided it by 47.2 and we get the unit vector. So this kind of numerical problem you can solve. Another numerical problem, that in 2 hours 12 minutes a balloon drifts 9.6 km north, 8.7 km west and 3.2 km in elevation from its release point on the ground. Find the magnitude of its average velocity. So it is moving in all the 3 directions I, j, k, and so minus I west, north, j plus, and the k the vertical upward direction we are choosing. So it is given that the time interval is 2 hours 12 minutes. You can convert 12 minutes into hour by dividing by 60, so you get 2.2 hours. And the distances are given, so you find that the what is displacement vector? 8.7 west, so minus 8.7 I, 9.6 north, so plus 9.6 j, and 3.2 up, so plus 3.2 k. So we have the velocity, then we divide by the time interval, so we get the velocity in kilometer hour per hour, average velocity. So that has been done here, and the division has been, the result has been obtained. Minus 8.7 upon 2.2 is 4.0 rounded off, and hence you can find the magnitude of average velocity. So that will be the sum of this number square plus this number square whole under the root. The sum of minus 4 square is 16.0, that of 4.4 square is 19.36, and that of 1.5 square is 2.25. You have added all the numbers and you get the square root of 37.61, which is nearly 6.1 kilometer per hour. So we have solved these problems, some problems for learning the vector algebra addition, but we are yet to define the product of the vectors, and so we will take that up in the second part of my lecture of vector algebra. So I hope that you are liking my lectures. Please click the like button. For subscribing my channel, click the subscribe button. For getting notification, click the bell icon. And thank you very much for being with me in this video lecture series.